on the East Coast. I'm your host, George Hudson, along with our other host, Robbie Colbreth. Robbie, how's it going today?
Man, I'm
Um,
great, man. I'm great.
hey, if you guys are tuning into the podcast today, go ahead and drop a comment and tell us where you're tuning in from. We got a good one today. It's called You Don't Know Me, Bro.
Well, guys, I'm excited, man. You don't know me, bro. Hey, this thing right here was born out of necessity to be able to share it because so many times I think people believe that they know the people that they're working with, they're dealing with, and really don't know a whole lot more than what they want to project simply because that person might be still figuring out some aspect of who they are themselves. So I have a little poem here, hiding in plain sight, showing the version I think is tight. Living this trauma, PTSD, the best version of me. Now, bro. You don't even know me. No traumas, but living this drama. Drama, fight, flight, fear, faith. Only so much time in my description. Jump to conclusion. How can you know me and I'm still figuring this me of me out? You don't know me, bro. You can't. I just unleashed a better version of me. I didn't even know this revelation of me myself. This is a journey started long ago. Now witness. This time has unfolded. I like it. Shed a lot of my past to find out who I am. Now pressure is released. You don't know me, bro. RJC Unleashed. Man, this is my intro, man. This is what I wanted to drop on you guys early this morning because so many people are living packed. I mean, they're so packed up, they're so uptight, right? They're factory sealed. Images of parental, environmental, causal stuff that's been happening all their lives, and they're just trying to fit and make this thing that they're creating work. They've forgotten about the little child that was wrapped up in the DNA of what they should be. They let all that stuff go, man. And so they started to become this elaborate projection and construction of something other than so they can fit in. And so they lose their greatest person until they can find that great person again and start something amazing, started happening all over again. So inhaling what you think people need to see, what you think they need to hear, what you think they need to understand and perceive about you, only to exhale what you need, want, desire, and what you expect. And sometimes these things don't even line up. They don't line up simply because this ain't all you. You're trying to figure out you. You're trying to figure out how you going to get that business, how you going to get that activity, how are you going to get that release of you that you think people need to accept, but you might just need to accept yourself. Along the way, the little child of dreams, they find they can do anything or not. When you meet that person, do they even know you? Do you know them? Will you ever get to know them? If a vibe can bring the two of you together and you can be friends, the little child plus you today, you can become family because you start seeing in the immensity of everything that's possible. Whatever has become now possibilities. Will you allow for this new world to be created? Will you allow for your full expression to come forth? Will you release your true self? And that's what this is all about. You don't know me, bro. Will this be accepted? Will you cause relationships to be sacrificed or grow relationships into something amazing? Bro, you don't know me, and then you do. So here's a little snippet. If you knew me back in the day, nice kid, laughing, joking, having a great time, silly on top of silliness. Then environment step in and I got to start beaning some heads because mine's been being a long time. And I make up in my mind, I'm tired of having that head being and I got to start becoming something that can defend myself while I try to release myself. And then after all of that stuff, you go to high school and you go to college and you start doing some amazing things and the world starts exploding. You start accomplishing everything you put your hands to turns to gold. And then boom, smash, crash, it all goes away. And then coming out of everything that went away that was on top of your life, you start realizing, hey, there's a greater aspect of who I am. And that greater aspect of who I am and what I can do and where I am and what I can believe and what I can become, it's exciting and it's waiting on me right now. In business, people unconsciously or consciously teach you to learn four core things about your future partner. Number one, know. Number two, like. Number three, trust. And number four, unite. You unite to do business. George, I'm going to break off right here, man. Jump in there, man.
I think one of the big things about like what we're trying to do with the podcast and Savage Will is unlocking that inner self and achieving your true potential. So through that process, you have to go through this learning of yourself, and you have to realize that, you know, once you're in the process of achieving or discovering what your journey is, who you are, what your gifting is, where you want to go, and the direction you want to lead in life, you start to realize that not everybody's vision is your vision. Not everyone has the same gifting. Not everyone is going to understand yours. Or I think the big thing is no one is really going to do it for you. And
That's
you
right.
have to be lonely in that process and be okay with that. In that, you know, while it's developing, while it's masking, while it's, you know, morphing into your vision, you have to be okay with that loneliness in the sense that your friends aren't really going to do it for you. You know, they're not going to start the business. They're not going to tell you to turn off the TV. They're not going to tell you stop spending, you know, stop sacrificing time, you know, just chilling or idling by, and then go, you know, work on your vision, work on your dream, work on your goal, work on your business, work on the podcast, work on the YouTube channel, work on real estate, work on getting an Airbnb, you know, whatever it is, work on creating a t-shirt, work on, you know, fill in the blank. Um, so I think the big thing as you develop kind of that inner tenacity that and start to unlock quote unquote your savage will, and you start to hone in your goal and your vision, you have to be okay with being lonely and having some degree of being unknown, having some degree of discomfort in the sense that people aren't like our whole life, all the way up to 18, even 22, 24, 25, maybe in some people may not ever get out of this, but they're just used to being told what to do.
To do.
You know,
Yep.
having that big brother, like, this is okay. This is how we normally do this. You know, I'll show you exactly how to, you know, show you the ropes, get you through it. And this is, you know, we have a fear of the unknown, so to speak. So we have to be comfortable with that. And in that
That's right.
process, we become lonely. So we can feel like no one knows who we really are. And so
Mhm.
we have to be comfortable with that if we want to tap into what we would call our savage will, you know, our purpose, walking into the design that the reason why we're on the planet.
100%. So I call that like creating me a clean heart. So for me to serve in the reality of me, right? And when I have a clean heart, those four principles come back: know, like, trust, unite. The first two are easy, I think, to know, right? To know what you really want. Right? And that gives you the opportunity, sometimes the last stand, the last chance to create you. And can I tell you something? It's all right to go ahead and create you and make yourself over, because it's all about you. It's not about what somebody else thinks you ought to be, because you're not living their design. You're living the design that was uniquely and wonderfully made for you. And when you can know who you are and start to evolve into that, you don't have to have all the answers right up front, because the answers lead you to the ultimate unfolding, the actualization of who you really are. So potentialities start to grow and things start to morph and they start to change. And then you stop spilling all your candy in the lobby. So it's like a business term where you're talking so much and talking too much to people because you don't really know all about what you want to do, because you're trying to fit it in to the interview of life. Forget about the interview of life. Interview yourself, right? When I think about knowing me, I sit my chair right here beside me. So this kills the loneliness, right? I dig what you were saying about being familiar with that lonely place. Even in my favorite person, Jesus, the scriptures even records he actually went to a lonely place. Oftentimes, be alone. That's the
Right.
creative place. But you got to get comfortable with that. But I'm trying to introduce something to you. Sit that little child next to you, the little child that had your DNA, that had all that creative splendor and wonder, that universal, beyond universal greatness, all on the inside. Sit that child back beside you, put your arm around that child, talk to that child, because it's a whole lot of unfolding and a whole lot of unlocking that can happen if you're willing not to be afraid, but to broach and explore that part of your journey. I don't care what age you are. Don't be afraid. Just go and get to know. Then another part is you got to like it. You got to like the person that you're coming in contact with. So you got to stop the judgmentalism. Most of our judgmentalism came from the fact that somebody told us how to think and how to believe and how we ought to act and respond to ourselves. But we never learned how to do the right thing for us. We learned off of somebody else's principles and how they were trying to control the world. And I'm not talking about being rebellious, and I'm not trying to talk about not conforming to a certain aspect of life. I'm simply talking about you being renewed in your mind, being transformed in your thinking so that you can figure out who you are, like and love who you are, and start doing who you are so that you can make maximum impact in the world. The other two are kind of in that alignment. It kind of challenges you. You got to start trusting. We got some key words today we like to use and throw around. Trust the process. I also throw in there learn the process, love the process, enjoy the process, morph in the process. But you got to start trusting you. When you get a great idea, you get that moment and it starts serving you and it starts giving you the tools and the talent and all the resources you need because you're in that moment and you're living in your now space. And then you got to, at that place, trust what you're doing. Trust who you are. Move in the plan because the plan is going to start to unfold. You got to write it down. Until you write the thing down, you can't have all of it because it's just going to be a thought that'll flee. It'll flee from you. And then you got to unite. You got to unite with yourself. The first person that you do business with is you. And when you start doing business with you and you start loving on you and you start accepting this love, this relationship, you and yourself and your possibilities, you start moving in your plan, your move. You start employing your time and your talents and your ingenuity for the benefit of you and not just exchange for money in somebody else's business. And then after a while, you'll start to come to the place. You know what? I can earn, I can learn, I can grow, and I can cause for some expression of myself to shape the world and help other people. But I got to get with those fantastic four: know, like, trust, and unite. They have to start with me. Now, let me give you this, and I'm going to give it over to George. George, I need to get ready. I'm queuing you up on deck. Watch this. Tension. There's always a tension. You got to understand there's a tension in everything, and tension is necessary. So in this tension, you don't know me, bro. One of the great prophets of all time says, Jeremiah, he says, why did I come out of the womb to see only struggle and sorrow to end my life in shame? That's a tension. Great writer, great book, 33, 34 chapters, amazing. But then another great writer, theologue, I love him, Paul. He said, you're God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate, heart, put on compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another. Listen, he gave a whole different construct, tension, from a shame to a chosen one. We wrestle with these realities on the inside of us, and we've got to give ourselves pause so that we can build ourselves up and start to manifest and start to release, unpack the stuff that's going to make us great, and then reveal the actual version of who we really are, the manifestation, the choice. We got to work at it. We got to evolve in it. And we got to realize wherever we are, we're only scratching the surface of it. George, jump in.
I love that. One of the things you pointed out was the uniting with yourself. And it's like bringing together all the pieces of you and putting it in, having an understanding of who you are, the things you struggle with, like some self-reflection, like doing all those things. You have to be alone to do that. So it's having those retreat moments, like you said, Christ had in the Bible, and just like one-on-one time with you and like in God, and just, questioning. It's really easy to sit there and say, okay, what do I want? And what are my actions communicating to, do they communicate that desired goal? And then you start to sift through, well, if I want to be in a committed, serious relationship that pursues marriage, I should probably get off Tinder. Like, and these things come up, like that's a very simple example, but like, that's where your actions don't communicate what you say you want.
Right on.
Right. And it's like things will come up in the sense of, what am I doing that's getting in the way of what I want to, where I'm communicating and say I want? Because we all have that like anti-hero in us. Like, we are our hero, and then we have that, that character inside of us that tears it apart. So we have to diminish the, like, what spiritually we would call the sinful side of us, and promote the holiness, in the sense that, like, the holiness being, our intention, the higher version of ourselves, the goals that we set, and those sorts of things. So we want to lift up the godly nature of ourselves and diminish the sinful, or like like satanic, if you will, side of ourselves. We have that God and Satan playing inside of us. There are those themes also. So it's about intention. It's about elevating ourselves, and then you really have to analyze and do an audit of your time, and then an audit of the actions that you're taking, and do they align with what you're communicating that you want. And if they're not, you have to change that, and you have to be willing to step into that alone time and really analyze that and say, okay, how do the people around me communicate and play a role into what I say I want to be and do, on like a moral level, on like a work level, and you have to analyze those different areas to say, like, and this all happens through that alone time. And we pull people into our life on very surface level areas. So when we say, you don't know me, bro, like, people sometimes really don't know you if you don't communicate what you want. And that's part of why we're here, is we have to first learn what we want based on what we feel like our purpose is. And then we have to communicate that. And then people will come in and go out of our lives, and not from like you're better than me, or I'm better than you, get out of my life. It's just more about direction and intention. Like,
That's
I'm
right.
not going to hang out with water polo people when I play football. That's what it is. I mean, I might have some friends that play water polo, but ultimately my crew is the football team, right? So it's the direction you're willing to go, and bringing the people around you that support that goal and have a similar mindset, and respect you, and you respect them, and you can run together. So you have to have that alone time first to figure out, what am I doing? And then you have to be like, all right, this is what oh yeah, that's right, I'm doing. No, I'm just kidding. And you have to bring other people, like, into that goal, that support that fall in line with that, or else you're not really going to get where you want to go.
Dude, I'm gonna bring in a munchable moment. Hey, by the way, I'm getting ready to drop this munchable moment. I just want you guys to know, starting in September, we're gonna be running some munchable moments for 90 seconds to 3 minutes, Monday through Thursday, starting the first Monday in September, just to let you know. But here's a munchable moment right now. Break the process, man. That's what you're talking about right now. Break the process. So break the process every 90 days. So I was used to be in this big company, and we was helping to grow the enterprise of this company. It was a Fortune 50 company. We were growing the enterprise in this company. And so we had a process. So we developed the process. We developed that process based on the resources that we had at the time, human resources, the money resources, the technology resources, and the process understanding. So we put all of it together, right? But something in me said, break the process every 90 days. And so every 90 days, I break the process. So the core and the principal functions of the business stayed intact, but there were pieces that needed to be broken, because the process was based on what the money allocation was, what the human resources were, what we knew at that time, and what the impacts would be cross stream in the business. Right. And so when we started to learn about the impacts cross stream inside of the business, upstream, downstream, cross stream, everything else, we realized that certain things that we were doing were impacting negatively the results that we were actually looking for. So we broke the process. So I'm telling you right now in this munchable moment, break the process. There's some things you've been doing that you're familiar with, and you need to break the process. And so every 90 days, just like when you goal set, you should have an evaluation process that allows you to look at small things in 30 days and larger things in 90 days and even larger things in a year and even larger things in 18 months or longer. You figure it out, but I'm here to encourage you to break the process. Because if you break the process every 90 days, you'll have a rescue and a resuscitation or a resurrection allocation plan. And with that, you choose. You choose, do I need to be rescued? Do I need to be resurrected from something? Or am I moving into something greater altogether? Then you work at it. You perform, you improve what you're doing. You evolve in it. You get greater at it. But if you never do an evaluation, you'll never know how much greatness you left on the table, because you too have just trapped yourself in a stream of familiarity, and you actually need to be growing into places you're not familiar with. And kind of what George was saying, I need to get some other people maybe dialing into my nugget in these areas of greatness, because I've just broken a process. I'm not dangling out there, because the principle and the core of who I am is still intact. But at some point in time, I'm going to attack the principle and core of who I am, not my finite belief system. Very finite. I know what my finite belief system is, and I know who I believe in and why I believe in it. You understand? But there's some other places that need to be broken, because those places were shaped and formulated by some stuff that was in my life at the time it was in my life, and it served me for the time that it was in my life. But now, because it no longer serves me, nor can it serve me, it has to be removed. Let me give you a story real quick. Nikola Tesla, hey man, brilliant mind, electricity, re-engineering, moving stuff in space, just a brilliant mind. To Elon Musk, super brain. Both of these cats well ahead of their time, right? I mean, if you look at Nikola Tesla, they shut him down because his brain, his capacity for learning, his ability that society wasn't ready for, to do things that society could not conceive, because the mindsets at that time wasn't ready for his brilliance. So he got shut down, systematically shut down. Now you have Elon Musk, who's got the Tesla car. He's absolutely disrupted every core business model that we have out there. Look at these. He disrupted the technology sector. He disrupted the travel sector. He disrupted communication and education, religion, politics. He disrupted the 7 influential pillars of society and influence. He's completely disrupted all of them. He conceptualized the world a whole different way. He's got this outer worldly genius. He's completely unpacked and still unpacking himself. He's living by exhaling the waste of what his past was and our past is, and he's inhaling the differences in the superhuman side of what's possible. If you look this guy up, according to Bloomberg Billionaires Index and Forbes, he's the richest billionaire on the planet at $266 billion as of August 17, 2022. But he's completely disrupted. Listen, cars. He's not even on the perfect car business. And yet he's selling cars, technology, and political influence. They're bringing up laws and rules and regulations to regulate his brain and what he's doing and he got unleashed, unpacked. And he's doing stuff that's disrupting, right? Imagine who's in his inner space, in his inner core. But he broke the process. And he's breaking the process again. And now, even in space exploration and space travel, he's leading the pack. NASA cut a deal with him. NASA runs it. They cut a deal with him in order to get certain things in outer space. So we're a new breed. We got to become a breed of doers and thinkers and creators. We got to come out of the strain and the resistance of just doing things the way our parents did them, just the way we learned in college or other places. We got to explore the unknown and stop being afraid of new technologies, new worlds, new needs, wants, desires, and expectations that need to serve us right now. Not just for money and fame, but for living and sharing truth. You don't know me, bro, because there's some untapped stuff that scares people. Just to even say what I just said, it's scary to some people simply because if you do, what you're created to do, you have broken a mold and you don't fit. And because you don't fit, somebody's going to want to get you out of their space or say you're crazy or you're gone off on the deep end. No, you were supposed to be disruptive. You were supposed to do something amazing. That's the child in you trying to tell the adult today. And if you heard the child in you with your DNA plan, who's straight off the presses from the creator of the universe, would you listen to him or would you interrupt him while he's speaking? Would you listen to him or would you spray him with a bunch of the rules and the fears and the things that can be the worst thing that can happen to you? And then you stifle him with opinions and you overplay him with intellect. Would you stop the child that has your DNA model, or would you embrace that little child, Robbie? Would you embrace that little child, whoever you are, and talk to that child inside and get the plan and get unpacked and stop just being another avatar with a planetary carbon exhaust that's just affecting the planet, leaving methane and no creativity to suck the methane out and repurpose new air into this space? I'm out. Go ahead, George.
Mm-hmm. I love that you brought up Tesla. I actually had a quote pulled up by him that I was gonna. He had some interesting thoughts on solitude and loneliness, or just like being alone. Some of the quotes that come to mind were he says, "The mind is sharper and keener in seclusion and uninterrupted solitude. Yeah. No big laboratory is needed in which to think. Originality thrives in seclusion, free of outside influences beating upon us to cripple the creative mind." There's a lot to unpack there, but another one is be alone. That's the secret of invention. Be alone. That's where ideas are born. And this is a guy that had 112 patents for, a cell phone in, 1900, or early 1900s. I think he passed away in 1920-ish. If I'm not mistaken, somewhere in that area. But I mean, this is a guy that just was a brilliant mastermind. You mentioned Musk and all the things that he's doing with the Tesla company. But Tesla himself was just a brilliant guy as well. And then, I'm kind of combining some of his quotes, but one of the quotes he had was also, "My brain is only a receiver. In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. That's right. I have not penetrated into the secrets of this core, but I know that it exists." So it's like you mentioned, are we tapping into source? Are we tapping into God? Are we tapping into what we were put on this earth to do and be? Or are we making rules, living out of fear, fear of the unknown? Is that controlling us? And in my opinion, we have to be alone in order to tap into what Tesla says here, to tap into the universe, the core of knowledge, the core of strength and inspiration. We have to have this alone time to feed that originality, to feed that, brilliance because inside of us is it all. And on top of that is packed on our past and, what he and she thinks and says and does and how that affects what I do and, fear of what I look like to other people. We live in no more of a greater time where people have an input on what you do and say and who you are. 100%. We can control how much we put out there, but we live in the world of everything I do is broadcasted on social media. So what I eat, what I wear, my thoughts, my political views, everything. So, and then immediately when you express those views and visions, that's who you are. People lock you in as that person. And it's almost as if there's no room for growth, change, and because a lot of people don't grow and change. So they want to label you and imprint you as this black and white individual. Your views are solid, stagnant. They don't change. You don't learn, you don't grow. So when we're trying to tap in and unlock and really achieve some of our God-given potential, we have to be careful what we put out, what we're, taking in. But your great ideas come to you in solitude, and sometimes they stay in solitude. Like sometimes you shouldn't, let people into that, because their energy, their, what he and she says and does, and will play into that, and then you'll give that energy to them, and you'll be like, well, Sally Joe doesn't like what I'm doing, and sometimes we fall back down to that level of where we care about what other people think
Yep.
on a superficial level, right? We should have that inner circle that, we're bouncing ideas off. We're saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is the direction. These are my goals. And I call that like the therapeutic circle.
Yeah.
It's not like a therapist, but it's like the people you can go to that you can tell basically anything. You can share your
Yes.
vision. You can share your goals. You can, you're working together with those people. And, I would call that the therapeutic circle. So sometimes you have to keep your ideas in that circle, and you don't let them out until they really crystallize and they really blow up to where like it can be reached on the consumer level. And then even then, people are going to complain. People are going to be against you. People are going to, say you're the worst human being ever. I can't believe someone would have that perspective. And there's just always going to be that person shaking their finger at you in their grandmother's basement. Like, it's just going to happen.
Dude, that's hot, man. Give me that voice one more time, George.
You can't think like that. I can't believe you.
I love it, man. I love it. It's a munchable moment. Straight out for that voice that George had. Listen.
I can't believe you would think like that. That's so low, man.
Right. Here's a munchable, man. Munchable moment. Don't jump to conclusions. Listen, I just changed relationally certain folks in my life because they always jump to conclusions. They taught friends and family to always jump to conclusions about who I am, who I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be doing, and all these things. And they're supposed to know all these things about me, but they're not in my inner space. They're not in my lonely place, in my room, my creative place. They're not where I'm receiving from the Lord through prayer and other things and reading and he directing my footstep. They're not there, but they have an opinion, kind of what you're talking about, George. They have an opinion based on what they want me to be, right? And not about who my DNA, who I'm supposed to be based on what the creator has and planned for my life, right? So if we talk about that therapeutic space, here's a therapeutic model, and it's very real. In the therapeutic model, write this down: forming. You formulate who you're supposed to be. Storming. Once you get that idea and that plan, that model together, there's a storming process. The storming process is detaching from what you used to be and growing into where you're going. Norming. Then you start to normalize the process. Norming is the normalization of the process where you broke the process and you formed it. You're in the storming period, and now it's become normalized. So now you're acting off of your principles, and then come to performing. You become what you've created. So you got forming, storming, norming, performing, and then finally transforming. You transform. You become it. And then once you become it, once you start to get the glimpse of it, then you realize that it just told you then is waiting on you. It is saying then is waiting on you. Then what? Then the next aspect of who you are is unfolding. Listen, scriptures say that Jesus often went to a lonely place. When he went to a lonely place, it didn't say he was lonely. He said he went to a lonely place. That meant he went to be alone. That's where he heard. That's where he saw. And after he saw and he got it, then he went to go teach it to all of his disciples. It's an it then, not just the if then. It's also an it then moment. And George talked about this in one of our previous podcasts. He talked about energy vampires, right? I call them vision assassins, but you also have energy vampires. You got to get certain folk out of your life, out of your inner core, in order to get to where you're supposed to be, right? And so you got to be careful even in that. You got to be careful. So you do have to make time. It can take a lifetime to get you to what you're supposed to be doing for this time of life, right? And so that you can start to live. And how do you do this? You got to know. You got to get to a place of knowing. Embrace your creator. It's funny. The world is evolving right in front of us, and we tripping. Some people are tripping. This the Neo. We're in the generation of the Neo. Name, image, and likeness. Right? Name, image, and likeness. This is where people are getting paid. Your children right now that have aspirations of doing something creative, whether it's sports or something sport related. Right now, it's happening in sports, right? Which has the biggest impact singularly than anything else in our planet of the United States of America, right? So now you got this name, image, and likeness is going on in colleges. And what's happening, people are coming in with their ingenuity and their creativity, and their launch pad happens to be sports. The class of 2014, the perfect seven, 2 + 1 + 4 = 7. Class of 14 was very demonstrative and pushing this name, image, and likeness and pushing hard to make sure that athletes get paid for their time. It was a big argument because athletes are like, oh, you're getting full scholarship and all you guys get to do is do this, that, or the other. You're dumb jocks and all like that. People don't realize the massive playbooks that football players have to learn from, and then they have to go to class and go on from there, and et cetera, and et cetera. Right? So this class of 2014, I call them the perfect seven, the disruptors of all of them. They're disruptors. That whole class was disruptive. I don't care what age they fell in. That was just a disruptive class of people in a generation. They got more stuff done, so now people can live in the Neo, name, image, and likeness, right? Where they can like who they are. And they can start to become fruitful and multiply and increase. And they can start subduing the old way things used to be done. And they take dominion. And now who are the benefactors? The benefactors of this happen to be their parents, who for so long would tell them, do it like this, do it like this, do it like this. Now we've evolved into a generation of Neo. And in this generation of Neo, the child can come out and the child can like who they are. And the child can trust who they're becoming. And so they can start to create, and they put little mini groups around themselves in this creative process. And they begin to self-think and they begin to correct. And after a while, they unite in the love for themselves. And in that uniting in the love for themselves, they start to become something other new. And in that, they can create a launch pad. I was looking at, I'm too young to be a grandpa, but I'm a grandpa. And as a grandpa, I got a granddaughter. She likes Coco Melon and some of these other little programs, right? And I look at that and I'm like, look at the genius behind a Coco Melon. Look at the genius behind this another little program where a husband and a wife with their children are on broadcast. I can't think of the name of it, but they're on and they've got their own show and they've got this fabulous home, this ginormous mansion with this ginormous pool that they were able to pay for because they thought that their family was interesting. And so they created a business model off of being interesting. We can say whatever we want to say. We can judge that however we want to judge it. But they found their space and they evolved. They defined it. They created room to grow and explore and unravel. They took off dead man's clothes of the past. And they started to move into a present that had heretofore never occurred before. And now they're winning. And then they got this new program that's coming out with these 4 guys about something about trying. And these guys they've just put together something silly and they try to do anything. And they made a program out of it and they made millionaires. What does that say about the time we're living in? It's time to unravel. It's time, man, to explore the genius and the greatness that's waiting for us. Last story, let me give you this, and I got to get George back in. And look at here, man. You've got to evolve. When you evolve, you define your truth. I give you this story because I gave you some backdrop. Jesus was teaching his new friends how to embrace overcoming impossibilities by faith, right? He had a good friend. His friend's name was Lazarus. Lazarus wasn't there to hear this evolutionary, revolutionary, radical teaching about anything is possible as long as you have faith, right? So Lazarus, his best friend, he's dying. He gets a report. Jesus gets a report about his friend dying. And intentionally, he refused to get there in time when everybody expected him to arrive. He arrived 4 days later, intentionally and on purpose. His friend was clinically dead, and he wept because of it. But when he got there, the people in his old understanding, the people in his old thought process said, had you been here? And so they started accusing him, and the family was grieving, and all these things were happening. And Jesus himself, he wept. Lazarus wasn't in that teaching. It was intentional. He didn't rush to Lazarus because a process had to be completed. But when he got there, the process was complete. And so there was clinical and factual evidence that this body type and this structure was dead. And so he then called him forth, but he called him forth the impossible into possibilities. And those that he just finished teaching about possibilities born out of impossibilities, they watched and they observed. So he called them out. And when he called him out, he comes up out of the grave. And when he comes up, he can't come up all the way out because he's still straddled. He's still wrapped up in the old dimension of his understanding. So he got help. He was given instruction to those around him. The inner core, unravel this man from these dead man's clothes. When he does this, the construct of who this new Lazarus is, he has capabilities, he has abilities, he has power, and he's awakened to it. And now he's more of a threat in his newness than when he was prior to. See, sometimes in the process, we've got to go through and we've got to come into the unity of our truth and the bond of loving that truth. And we've got to put away all unbelief and all false hope. And we've got to kick it out of the room and let endless possibility roll in and engage our faith. We've got to believe in our truth. I believe in the truth of Savage Will because where you unpack and you unleash and you start doing stuff that you're capable of doing, stuff that somebody told you couldn't do, stuff that you started believing was not for you, you've got to unpack that. You're responsible for that. This is stuff you have to do. George, jump in there, my brother.
I love that. So it's like you mentioned, basically you're like breaking free from the mold of what society thinks, what their standards are for you, and stepping into, who you're meant to be and what your vision is and like what your role and purpose is. I always think of this makes me think of the scene in the Dark Knight, the first one. Where the Joker, he's in the hospital, he's about to blow it up. And, he says, if I said that a truck of soldiers was going to die tomorrow, no one would really go crazy. It'd be sad. Yeah. But like, that's according to plan. And then he's like, well, if I said that one little old mayor is going to die, then everyone loses their minds. And it's kind of like similar in the sense that, we have this plan from the day we're born. Like people take out, you get a birth certificate. When you're 1 year old, or a couple years old, you go to kindergarten. There's this like mapped out plan already for you when that, society deems necessary, that when you're born, from the day you're born, even from, the moment that conception happens and your parents are planning to bring a child on the planet, like everyone has a plan for you before you even decide what the plan is for you yourself. And once you realize that your plan for you might not fall in line with, just go through high school, go to school, get a good job, the whole retire at 65, like that whole old plan, like doesn't exist anymore. So you're going against the grain of, what society had as normal and what was suitable at one point in time to have a great life in America. And, when you're breaking that mold, you're going to have that backlash, and it's going to really test whether or not you want what you're going for. And, it's almost like when everything's going to plan, everyone's nice, it's great, you have no opposition, but it's like the moment you decide like, hey, this is what I'm going to go and do and be and achieve in my life, it's like everyone turns into Savage SpongeBob, and like the Joker, they're like running around like, you can't do that. What? Well, do you guys see what George is doing? No way. And then there will be people like that, but then there will be people that are like, dude, you see what George is doing? That's awesome. Like, I'm so happy for it. So you're going to have all kinds of noise just affecting what you do, and you can't let that invade, or speak to who you are, and what you've lined up for yourself in your plan of life. Like Joe Rogan says that he tries within everything he has inside of him not to read comments, because there's always someone just shredding you in the comments if you're big enough. Like, you know, like there's someone that's disagreeing with you that says you're a bigot, says you're a liar. I can't believe you would have such a view. You're trash. No one likes you. Like, people are thinking and saying and, believing those things about you. And you kind of have to expect that, and you can't give it any attention.
Yep.
As he says, when he reads the comments, he just gets like down because he like cares what people think about him. And we have that side of us that like cares how we are perceived by society and by our friends and family and so forth. And like one of the thoughts I come back to is like, I didn't expect me to be where I'm at in life. My parents probably had their own vision of what they wanted me to be and do in life. But like, as long as I'm working as hard as I can and pursuing what I feel God has put in my life as much as I can, and with everything that I have, and I'm learning and growing and trying to seek that guidance, like I can't be unhappy with, the process, even though it's not perfect yet.
That's good stuff, man. I love it, man. I love it. Got a munchable moment for you. Unleash this powerful DNA called you. Is now, now is the time, maybe the first time in your therapeutic community, where you could be risen from the dead. You begin to develop very rapidly into this light of this new truth called you. This makes you more dangerous now than before in your entire life. You're a threat to the establishment, whatever that establishment is or was, like George was talking about, what everybody perceived or expects from you. That's the establishment. You're more of a threat to that establishment now as a new creation in you, because you're tapping into the DNA that was supposed to disrupt and cause for something new, to cause for unity and loving one another in this world, not for separating and pulling apart and destruction. So now you realize, when you start tapping into this DNA of success called you, the unleashed, now you're free from the 7 pillars of society and or influence as you knew it. You're loosed into the 5 pillars of creation and learning it. And these are accompanied by 5 principles of manifestation, and it's laced up into the principles of success. And I want to talk about a couple of these real quick. And it's for you to go ahead and vet them out, but I'm just going to list them for you. The 7 principles of influence in a healthy society happen to be: number 1, religion. The other is family. The other is education. And the other is business. And then you have government. And then you have arts and entertainment. And now we have the new one, media. These are the 7 principles of influence in a healthy society. You now can operate at a different level in your new DNA, because you understand it on a different level, and there's a different graininess in your thought process that's working. In fact, it's no longer that graininess, is eliminating the grain, and things are starting to flow smoothly. It's 6 principles of manifestation that you've got to get for yourself in order to go into this new self, this new world. 6 principles of manifestation. Plan. You got to write it down. Some people might want to call it goals, but I look at it like my boy Curtis said. He didn't say this, but I gleaned it from him. Here's what you got to do. You got to learn to live in the 4th quarter, living it like it's the 9th inning. It ain't done till it's done. Write the plan. Develop. You've got to learn how to develop this plan. You've got to then learn how to execute, right, on this plan, on this model. Once you do that, you got to duplicate it over and over again into different regions of your life, different regions of your mind, and then you've got to manifest. Manifest is becoming the thing, right? You've got to fight the enemy and not the plan. Iron Ranger, rules of combat. That's what they said. That's a quote. Fight the enemy and not the plan. So The plan is the good stuff. It's transformative. The enemy is not the plan. The enemy is your old nature. The enemy is you being all tangled up in the old you and in the comments that you need, the approvals that you want from other people. Get that out of here. 5 principles of creation. Be fruitful, multiply, increase, subdue, take dominion, kneel. It's the kneel process. The kneel process isn't new, it's old. Name, image, and likeness. The scripture said we were made in this image and after his own likeness. That's the first kneel. So get the kneel inside of you. When you get the kneel inside of you, name, image, and likeness, you can be fruitful. You can multiply. You can increase. You can subdue. You can take dominion. But you've got to be ready for that challenge. And you got to be ready for the naysayers and people that's going to talk bad about you and try to tell you that you're off course, because they only know and they only understand in the construct that they're stuck to. And then the 5 principles or 7 principles of success, they'll start to emerge. Here's the 7 principles of success. Write it down. You're responsible for unfolding these. Number 1, propensity. Number 2, providence. Number 3, so powerful, persistence. When everything looks like it's not working, persist. You're busting up the old stuff. Number 4, a passion. You got to have a passion about what you're doing and a passion about what you want to become. And then you got to have perspective. You got to change your perspective about things and let it evolve. Then you got to become predictable. There's some predictability in some of this model, right? That has to emerge. So you got propensity, providence, persistence, passion, perspective, predictability. And then the final one, new thing. You become a new thing. You actually begin to live your retrogenesis. You start to create. You start to embrace the war of the old nature versus the new. And then you start to dismiss the sound of the old nature because you realize that the trappings come along with that. You can do better. Hey, man, this thing is all about this one statement right here. You don't know me, bro. You just don't know me because I'm still figuring me out. I'm still letting the good, great stuff that God has for me unfold, right? The only time I'm failing is if I feel like I'm failing, and I surrender to that because actually I'm growing. And some things that I used to do and do well, they don't serve me anymore. They don't need to serve me anymore. It's time for me to move forward. Real failure is stopping or quitting on you. Real life is realizing some things have to absolutely change and die. Transition time. George.
It's great stuff, Robbie. The big thing that stands out is fighting the establishment. And I think it's important to remember, like, when you are fighting against like the mold of the establishment and the, like the programming of society that's been placed upon you from 0 to wherever you're at now, whatever age. And let's say from 0 to 18, you're really just going with the flow, don't really have a conscious, awakening or salvation, you could say, for unlocking and hacking into your savage will. And, at 18, you kind of start to unpack that. And you have to fight against the establishment that's external. And then you have to fight against the establishment that's internal as well. Like, there's going to always be a part of you that's like feeding the establishment mindset,
Yep.
That's feeding the old mentality, that's feeding, and you just have to feed that less and less and less. And then you'll find yourself like becoming that new creation, the renewal of your mind, living your body as spiritual sacrifice, like, living out your purpose, your role, and your, like, what you feel God has put you on this planet to do. So there's that internal establishment and the external establishment, like the effect the establishment has on who you are and what you do and how you think. And that's, a lot of different factors go at play inside that. So I try to be very careful of like the movies I watch, the TV shows that I watch or choose to spend my time doing. And a lot of times I don't like binge watching things because I feel it's like you feel yourself like turn back into like this, just going through the flow, like feeding, just I don't know, doing what everyone else is doing. You lose some critical thinking ability, and when you feel it after like the fourth episode of Stranger Things that you're going through, and you're like, where did the last 4.5 hours of my life go?
Yeah.
And then you're like trying to you feel it. I don't know. I don't have the words to really describe what that feeling is. It's just like you feel that loss of drive consciousness. Some people just continue, but like some people are like, no, I have to get up and go do something. I have to get out of that. And
Yeah, that mind trap.
that's kind of an image for life. There's a movie called, I think it's called Percy Jackson, and there's a scene. It's kind of like about mythical creatures and like
Yeah.
Greek mythology, and that and in the scene, the three main characters are running from the bad guys, and they find themselves in this looks like a casino environment, and it emulates like no windows. You don't know what time it is, and they start passing around this food, and then it's like these little cupcakes that it's like has drugs inside of them, and it distorts your reality of time, your perception of time. And then they feel like they've only been in there a couple hours, but they've really been in the casino for like days. And so in life, that creates like an image of like, if we're not intentional about how we're spending our time and
Yes,
maintaining that
yes.
conscious level of awareness, we can find ourselves, a year down the road, like, okay, what have I done to move towards my goals? What have I done to move towards financial freedom? What have I done to move towards a better marriage? What have I done towards building the future? You know, if and those are it's about the things you desire in life. Like some
That's right.
people don't really care, but that's not really who I'm addressing here. Who I'm addressing here is the people that know they're meant for something more, that meant to achieve, you know, a greater level of autonomy. Because I think ultimately that's what we're speaking at, is when you have that financial freedom, the control of time and money come with that. And then you spend your time how you want to. You're able to make money doing things that fuel you and fuel your passions. And to me, there's like no greater thing we can do than have the control over our time as best as we
Yes.
can, because time is the only resource that we don't get back. You know, if we can make the most of our time while we're here, I think that's kind of another reason, we have to be able to utilize that as savage will thinkers and doers.
That's hot, man. That's hot. So you gotta continue to evolve. You gotta define it. You gotta give it room to grow. You gotta explore it. You gotta unravel from the dead man's clothing of your past. And then you just gotta embrace, man. Embrace the new feeling, the new culture, the new you, the evolution. Right? You gotta sit your little self down like this chair, the example I was showing you. In this chair right here, I'm just gonna give you a therapeutic model. I sit Robbie down, little Robbie, right here. And I said, little Robbie, listen, dude, what do you need protection from? I want to show you the DNA, Big Robbie. Okay. And I don't need you to interrupt me, Big Robbie. Okay. And I want you to know that there's more to you than you will ever know. But if you allow me, I'll show you the DNA and you can grow into it. Say on, carry on. And I take out my notepad and I start talking. And people say, hey, man, you sound like a crazy man. No, I sound like a man. I'm trying to tell you something, that if you sit your little self down and you start thinking about all the goals, the dreams, and the aspirations you let go, you surrendered because you bought somebody else's package. You bought somebody else's hopes. You bought somebody else's dreams. You bought somebody else's philosophy. You sidelined yours and you said they weren't good enough because they weren't making millions and billions of dollars right away. But you didn't understand that it was a process. You sidelined all of the greatness that's in your brain and your noodle because you said somebody else can say it better. And even if you were broken English and you said it, but it was your truth, Smith Wigglesworth. Boy, if you ever listen to his messages, you ever look at his actual sermon, how it was written out, and you listen to him when he preached the broken English that he spoke with, you would say, this dude? Yeah, but he believed what he said. And because he believed what he said and he was convinced of it, he changed the game. He affected so many lives. And though he's dead, he's still affecting people to this day. That's legacy. That's impact. That's what you want to leave. Some people say, I don't want to leave a legacy. You're already doing it. You can't live without it. It's already happening. But you got to sit that little self down next to you and have an exploratory talk about who, what, where, why, and how you're going to be you. Then you plan it. Then you got to believe it. You got to develop it. You got to do it. Then you have to teach it. But you also have to be accountable to it. And then you have to perfect it. When you begin to evolve in this manner and you're defining it and you're growing in it, man, your life is going to be forever more exciting. The change is going to be exhilarating. The release is going to be absolutely amazing. You'll attract another crowd of folks who are interested in supporting you financially, interested in supporting you by hearing what you have to say, interested in supporting you by priming your thought processes, by giving you some other stuff to think about. You, hey, it's just everything's going to change. Those that need to be in your orbit, in your galaxy, will emerge. They'll sense you out. They'll find you. And transformation will start to occur for not just you, but a bunch of folks. Man, this thing is waiting on us. This is a savage understanding. And we can do greater. As long as we haven't given up, as long as we haven't said, I'm too old to do this, as long as we haven't allowed ourselves to acquiesce and just fold under the pressure of some things that we're currently facing. If we don't do those things, but we embrace our little self and talk to that little self because it knows more than what we think it does, if we allow for those conversations to occur and realize you're not being a crazy person, but you're actually beating your PTSD of living the trauma, and you're going to start to realize some amazing truths about yourself that you can get along with, that you can love deeply. George.
I love it. It's really funny. There's the image of you sitting your younger or your child self to the side of you, and it makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, it sounds weird, but when you have people that are willing to break outside the mold, you're willing to try new things, and I think that's part of it. Is with me, it's, am I pursuing a solution? It might not be the solution, but am I pursuing a solution? Like, if, for example, my goal is financial freedom, and I'm sitting here on the World Wide Web looking about how people achieve that and become their own boss and walk away from their job. And, if I'm not trying what these people are saying, then I think that's the failure. And, because that's what people do. The thing that brought them out of financial prison, I guess you could say, is not the first thing they try most of the time. It's probably the sixth thing or the seventh or the eighth. But if they would have stopped at 5, they would have never gotten there.
Yep.
It's my deal is, it's not a matter of if, but when. It's not. And then if I don't do it, who is going to do it for me? No one. If not me, then who? If not now, then when? And that's just the mentality we have to have. Is a loss is not failure. The failure is discontinuing the mission. It's aborting the mission. And that's just kind of what it is. And there's many strategies to do that. And you have to know yourself through that process, or else you're going to, be discouraged and want to give up and say you don't have time and say you're too busy. And it's just not meant for me. And these, like, I call them like a poor language of excuses comes to rise. And it's just, it's, you gotta be intentional with your child self, with the you that needs like love and support in your own life. And you have to have that through this mission, or else you're gonna abort it. You're gonna abandon the ship. You're gonna say, well, that was just nonsense, and they're fake. It's not a real way to make money. And you'll just come up with all these excuses why it's not right for you, but you ultimately decided to stop trying. Um, so
Failing forward,
yeah,
failing forward is an option. Failing and not moving is not. So
right.
we got to get rid of that. Fail forward means I'm going to learn and grow. Uh, Failing and stopping means I quit. You got to get that quitter out, eliminate that process altogether, right? And then excuses. I'm glad you talked about that. And I pledged a fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, years ago. And in pledging that, we learn about excuses. Excuses are tools of incompetence, which builds monuments of nothingness. And all those who profess in using them are seldom good at anything else. I I memorized so many things about going through that pledge process, but that's one that I allow to continue to teach me on a regular and daily basis often, is not allowing myself to make excuses, not allowing my dreams to die because of an excuse, uh, but processing myself and breaking the mold in every 90 days and retracking. My core is intact, but some of the things that grow off of my core or that try to attach themselves to me, I have to remove. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and he was telling me, he says, dude, he says, I went to Cozumel. I said, talk to me, dude. He went to Cozumel, and he said, I went out on a boat and we were fishing, and I caught this great big marlin. I was like, dude, how long did it take you to do it? He said, about 22 minutes. I said, dude, you are a beast. How you bringing a big giant marlin in 22 minutes? He said, well, let me just tell you. First, my family member wrestled with that joker for so long, and I got the last 22 minutes. But when I was reeling the last 20 minutes, my arms just got tired. And I said, well, what'd you do? He said, my family member grabbed my arm and did this. That was the support team he needed, so he can make that final reel. And he said, then I saw something amazing. I said, what was that? He said, the marlin had this fish that was sucking on his body. And he said, we scraped it off. That was the most amazing thing. And I said, that's how human beings are. There's a sucker always trying to steal something from you. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to put the time in. They don't want to fully plan, believe it, develop it, do it, teach it. They don't want to be accountable to it. They don't want to be perfected by it. There's always somebody trying to steal that stuff. But what we're talking about right here in the Savage episode is go out and learn from some of the greats that done what they've done and achieved what they achieved, and put those things to work until you find the one that works for you, or you create a hybrid. When you create that hybrid that works for you, then you utilize that, let it serve you until its time is done. And when its time is done, and you'll know it, you have to get it out of the way. And can I tell you something? It's okay when something or someone's service is over in your life. It doesn't mean you use them. They got the best of all you are, and you got the best of all they are. And it doesn't mean you eliminate them completely out of your life, but the relationship changes. Make sure you're changing your process. And that doesn't mean you're doing it every 90 days. You're changing parts of you every 90 days. George, you got this, man. Bring us home, man.
Yeah.
We need subscribers. Do your thing, baby.
I love that. It's just to wrap that point up. We've become so transactional with how we approach relationships, and I think we have to get outside of that. Everyone comes into your life for a reason, a season, or they're going to stay in your life till for the rest of it. And it's okay to branch away from relationships. It's okay to branch away from those things. So if you have your why, if you're just out here abusing relationships and using people for what their resources, then that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about, as you develop this vision, and it becomes bigger than you and you have to follow it, then ultimately people they'll find themselves out of your life. Basically, it's not that you're leaving them; they're just not coming with you.
Yeah.
It's like I painted the picture. You're gonna spend more time with the football team than the polo team, like if you play football, and that's not a bad thing. That's just what it is. So we're not encouraging anyone to just abuse their friendships or relationships, but
At
sit there
all.
and utilize them, in your life. But that's going to wrap things up for today. Couple announcements. If you're watching this, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find Robbie on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. We also have an Instagram with Savage Will 1111. We're going to get that on the thumbnail for you guys, and then also Robbie's LinkedIn. We're going to be sure to put some of that content out on all these platforms, but you can find us on Savage Will 1111 on YouTube. We really appreciate you guys. If you're listening and watching this, we're going to continue to post content and continue to kind of, get more organized with what we're putting on Instagram and some of these other channels. And we look forward to having you support us throughout the journey. If you have any thoughts, feelings, like something you liked in the episode, something you thought we should expand upon more, feel free to comment that in the comment section, and we'll be sure to get to it. But that's all we got for today. We appreciate you, and in your journey, we want the best for you guys. So
Savage Will out. Love you guys, man.